to be here, and thank you for that very kind introduction. I appreciate it. And I would also like to thank again the leadership of EMET. In particular, I'd like to thank Sarah Stern. Thank you again for this honor. It's a great honor for me. I appreciate it very much. And I see some good friends out here, good colleagues of mine, and some of them even know my nickname, Paco. What Mark Meadows didn't say, two things that he should have said. One, that he has twice as many Jews in his district than I do. I'm on the border in San Diego. And the second thing is that my uncle's actually in his district. It was interesting that when my uncle is not actually my uncle, it's my wife's uncle, decided to move out of New York. He wanted to go as far away as he could from New York, and he moved to North Carolina, which I always thought was kind of, we're glad. He's a great guy. And for me, really, it is an honor to be here. The one correction I would make, I was actually the first Democrat, not an early one. It was the first Democrat against the Iran deal, the first. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of that. And thank you. And the reason I was the first is because my whole life I've been a very strong supporter of Israel. I grew up a very religious young person, and then after going to college, I actually entered the priesthood. I studied to be a priest for 5 years. And virtually every Sunday, well, we Catholics are very creative. We call our first reading the first reading. And then very creatively, we call our second reading the second reading. And then creatively, we do actually get creative on the third, and we call it the gospel. But the first reading is 95% normally what we call the Old Testament, and normally talks about Jerusalem and Israel. And so I grew up with this love for Israel and Jerusalem in particular because of what I heard and believed in every Sunday. And I didn't know if I'd ever have the opportunity to ever be able to help Israel in any meaningful way. And God one day granted me the ability to be in Congress, and I had that opportunity, and I have that opportunity now, and I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to do everything I can to be a solid, strong supporter of Israel, and not because of politics. Again, Mark has twice as many Jewish people in his district as I do. We do actually have a synagogue, and in fact, we always laugh that when we go to a meeting, some of our friends at AIPAC, we said, why don't we carpool one? I think 6 people fit in my car, and that's how many people are in the district who are Jewish, I think. But my love for Israel is not because of politics, it's because of religion, frankly. And I've been able to go to Israel a number of times now, starting in 1993. And the one thing I realized, and was so different than what I expected, was this. Because in my mind, Israel was so big, and Israel was so important in the world, I thought it was the size of the United States. To me, it was huge, it was giant. And when we get there, we have a fantastic guide who starts to tell me that if the warplanes came over from Jordan, they'd get there in about 4 minutes. I'm like, oh my God. He described how important it is for Israel always to be strong, to be able to defend itself, because the country is small. And so that's why I've always been a very, very strong supporter of military aid, and aid so Israelis can defend themselves. So they'll always be able to defend themselves. Of course, and we should always be there to back them up 100%. I know that I always will, as a Democrat, not as a Republican. We have to remember, we have to be bipartisan. If we as Americans want to help Israel, we have to keep it bipartisan. Bipartisan support for Israel. I will never waver. And so I'm very honored to receive this. I do have one pet peeve, and I've mentioned this all the time to the ambassador, who's a good friend of mine, Ron, and I'll mention it again. One of the things that drives me crazy is this. When people talk about 67, and they interchange it with 1967. The reality is that Israel existed in 67. It's one of the few countries in the world that existed in 67. There was no United States in 67. Israel existed in 67. And when people say we should go back to the 67 lines, I'm okay with that. I'm actually fine with that. I'm very fine with that. The lines would be twice as long. I mean, the neighbors may not. I am fine with 67. And I say that for two reasons. It's so important that we never delegitimize Israel. Remember how old Israel is, and especially and painfully, how Jerusalem has not been the capital and how we Americans don't have our embassy there. It's painful. I was hoping and hoping still that we're able to move our embassy there this year. I would love to visit our American embassy in Jerusalem this year. I will work with anybody here, Democrat, Republican, Independent, to help Israel. I'll do that my whole career as long as God gives me life and opportunity to serve in this position. And it's an honor to be here tonight and receive this.